Hi, Jim.
Nick.
How you doing?
Good.
Good. For the listener, I met you a few months ago at the YMCA,
Correct.
and we had a short conversation, and I told you a little bit about what I did, and you expressed interest in being willing to share.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically this concept, this format is a way for you to provide what I call a biography of your life. And so having done this a few times now, throughout the conversation of your life, we'll probably highlight a certain philosophy or principle or some type of experience that you was impactful on your life.
Mm-hmm.
But the format is just to kind of chronologically go through your life and see where it goes. So I like to start at the beginning. So early childhood, where were you born, and let's go from there.
Okay. I was born in central Pennsylvania, small town Lewistown, born in 1950. Growing up there was pleasant. It was a typical small town atmosphere, very little crime, very pleasant. Everybody knew everybody, and it was a great place to grow up. And I finished high school there.
Oh, hold on.
Okay. Back up.
Yeah, 0 to 10. It's funny. My mom was from Pennsylvania. I think Dunbar, PA, somewhere around there.
Okay.
But 0 to 10, what was that life like?
I'm sorry.
0 to 10, like 5 to 10. Once you start remembering life.
0 to 10, yeah. Elementary school, very nice, good friends. Halloween, I mean, it was nice to go out on the streets. You felt safe. Collecting your candy, seeing the houses, people decorated. It was really it was a nice town, really nice town to grow up. I had good friends, played sports at that age, 9 to 10.
Did you have a particular sport you liked?
All of them, basketball, baseball. They were all good.
When you were a kid, was there a particular job or vocation you dreamed about, or you just...
No, growing up, no, there was no vocation or job that I was interested in at that time.
Mm-hmm. From middle school to high school, same, just enjoying childhood,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
sports.
again, had good friends. That's when the middle school to high school, the cars started coming in, girls started coming in. I wrestled, high school wrestler. Played some football, but got a knee injury. Not good. But I did play in league basketball and baseball. So it was a very active town, and that was really nice. The churches, every church in my town had a baseball team and a basketball team. So when you went to church, whether you're Lutheran like I am, or Methodist or Catholic, every one of them had a team. So it was good interaction between the
So you would pray, each person would pray to their God and see who had a better God, and you would...
Yeah, sometimes it worked like that. And we won a lot, so I think we were okay with it.
God was on your side, huh?
Yeah.
That's funny. So yeah, I look at society today, and I don't think kids play as much as they did back when you were a child. Some still play, there's still sports.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's done differently now? Like, I talk to parents with kids now, and sometimes people feel like it's forced upon the child. Or did you feel like it was forced, or was it just a natural part of, like, were you ever like, man, I don't want to do this, or you enjoyed it so you didn't mind?
No, growing up, we enjoyed it. I mean, it was fun to play. Now there's so much pressure on kids. They've got so much travel leagues, travel ball, I think.
So that wasn't a thing back then. It was
No, not at
more
all.
local.
Yeah. Yeah, of course you had your little leagues, and you go to the Little League World Series, play your regional tournaments, things like that. But no, there was no pressure to play sports. It was nice. It was comfortable. Parents would come and they'd just cheer you on. Now I've coached, and it's some of these parents are just terrible. It's like you're playing in the World Series at 10 years old,
So, yeah, contrast that for me. Is it just more aggressive now? Because the sports, we still play the sports, but how is that different? Is it the parent, or is it the skill? We want the kids to be better. How is that different from when you played to when
Oh, I think it's parent pressure. There's no question about it. I mean, they get into sports and they're looking at all college scholarships and things like that. And like I say, a lot of travel ball, it can get very expensive. And then parents expect more out of their children if paying, if they're paying for these tournaments and so forth. And it's just, I just don't see where they enjoy it that much anymore, unless, I mean, they're really into it. And I think maybe only 20% of the kids are really into it, and the other 80 are doing it because that's what their parents want.
So when you were a child and you played sports, you would say most of the kids liked it and enjoyed it
Yeah.
versus the kids today. So I have young kids, and so this is something we think through as a couple for our kids. They like basketball, and so we give them time and effort to do it, but not so much where we're traveling around the state. And we did AAU for a little bit, but it was so aggressive. And so we kind of stepped back from that. But we want the kids to really want to do it. And, playing at the Y, it's not that aggressive. But they, last year they had a tournament at the end, like depending on where you ranked. And this year they only let the top 4 teams play. Because of the lower teams, the parents were so aggressive. So they didn't even do it for them. So you played sports, and then when you're finishing high school, what was that process like for you? Did you know what you wanted to do, or talk us through what that decision making was for you?
Well, no, it was totally up in the air. What I wanted to do, I worked different places. I worked in a precious metal factory, refining precious metals. I worked for a street department, basically doing everything that was required in the town.
How old were you when you had your first job?
Oh, my first job, probably cutting lawns around 14, shoveling snow, things.
Did you feel like, poor me, I have to do this, or like, no, I get to do this. I get to make some money?
A little bit of both. I was, my dad was, he was a good man, blue collar guy, but then he went into white collar work. But anyway, he was one of these, you've got to learn to appreciate things. You'll appreciate it more if you go out there and earn it and stop giving them to you. And that's the philosophy pretty much I grew up with. If you go out and earn it, you'll appreciate it more. If it's given to you, what do you care?
Right.
But anyway, so I did street work, factory work, precious metal industry. And I'm just thinking to myself, this isn't what I want to do. I don't want to grow up in a small town doing this kind of work. It's just not for me. Then I actually, should I go ahead and go on?
Yeah.
I actually saw an advertisement with the Los Angeles Police Department. And I said, okay, this looks pretty good. And I applied with Los Angeles. Now I'm in Pennsylvania at this time.
Have you ever been to LA?
No, never been. But anyway, so I applied with them. They were seeking applicants all over the United States. They sent the testing to the Civil Service Center in my hometown, so I did all the testing there. The only thing, and I passed.
Was this your senior year of high school?
No, actually, this is around when I was about 20.
Okay, so you got out of high school, but you didn't go to college?
No.
You were working jobs?
Yeah, just working.
Was it common for people to go to college back then, or what? Why did you decide not to go to college?
It was 50-50. That was the career. We had vocational opportunities at our high school if you wanted to go into VOTEC and, electrical, plumbing, cars, things like that.
So from high school, they were showing you both sides, or I don't know if they're doing that as much anymore.
Yeah. But that was good. I mean, that you need those workers.
Yes.
People. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to interview more people like that because I don't think we're doing that out of high school. I'm meeting too many young adults that went to college, and then when they're 25 or even 30, realizing, why did I do this when I could have gone into a vocation? So if you're saying back then that was taught and encouraged, you don't have to go to college.
No.
Interesting.
No, that's not your choice. It's not for everybody, of course. But yeah, going back to the high school, coming out of high school, I did mostly that type of blue collar work, but
Remember what your wages were back then?
$1.65 an hour.
Now it's like
Minimum wage.
20 something.
got a raise to $1.80. That was a big raise. So yeah, it wasn't, but of
Yeah.
course the inflation over the years
Yeah.
has taken its toll. But yeah, going through those jobs, and I just, this isn't for me. It's nice to, bring in a paycheck, but that's not for me. So back to seeing Los Angeles was advertising for police, and I read the article and it caught my interest.
So this was like an advertising in the newspaper?
Mm-hmm.
And they were just advertising in all sorts of random...
Yeah, they were looking all over the United States for qualified applicants. And so I was able to do the testing in Pennsylvania. And they said, you're accepted, come on out, do your physical, and you're hired. I said, okay. So myself and a friend of mine were going to do that. Well, we headed down to Miami to drop off some friends, and then we were going out to LA to finish up the testing.
That's quite a detour.
It was. But anyway, the friend I was traveling with, he had his car and all the money and everything. And got down to Miami, and he said, look, I'm going to go up to Pensacola to visit my aunt, and come on back down, we'll go out and we'll finish up our testing out there and so forth. Well, I got a call a couple days later saying, I think I'm going to stay up here with my aunt. And I said, what? You got the car, you got the money, you got everything. So I kind of got stuck in the Miami area. I was able to get a plumbing job there, started out that, and then another job was called Jackson Byron's. It was a warehouse, and was working there. And then I saw the Miami police was advertising for police officers, so I went down and applied with them. And went through their testing, did real well. As a matter of fact, it was kind of funny. I was sitting in there to take the civil service test. And there was about 35 people in there, and get ready, and they say, how many of you have a 4-year degree or better? And hands go up. And how many have a 2-year degree or better? And more hands went up. And how many just have a high school diploma? My hand went up. I was the only one that was just there with I outscored them all, and they ran me through right away. But I was doing plumbing in the meantime.
Is it similar to like the military's ASVAB test, or is it totally different?
I don't know, because I never took the ASVAB test. I could go back to the military. I did get called down twice during the lottery they had for Vietnam, and they sent me back. And I think the only reason I can think that they didn't take me was I'm a sole survivor in the family. I'm a sole male survivor, and they won't take a sole male survivor.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was it. But anyway, so I was doing plumbing work while they were going through my application and everything, and I injured my finger, and I couldn't finish the physical, so I was delayed about another 6 weeks. And then when I was physically able to do what I needed to do.
Which finger was it?
That one, see how it kind of hangs down?
Yeah.
Cut the tendon across there. So it was in a splint.
Yeah. At least he's still, it looks fairly functional.
Yeah, it is.
It's good. I chopped my thumb off from me, and they reattached it. See, it's shorter than the other. But all right, so you applied for Miami. You tested well, so that you knew mentally you had something there. And then do you remember what your physical test was like?
Oh yeah, you had to run the 100-yard dash in a certain amount of time. You had to climb a wall in a certain amount of time. So many push-ups, so many sit-ups in a certain amount of time.
So this is like the 70s, right? Early 70s?
Yes, early 70s.
What was the general, because I met you at the Y and I believe in fitness, what would you say the general disposition of men was back then? Were they generally not overweight? Were they generally, not everyone was necessarily fit, but were they of average fitness?
Yeah, the city of Miami was known to be very restrictive on who they took. You couldn't have anything wrong with you, no defects, and no overweight and that, no, they wouldn't take you. You had to be a certain height and weight within their standards. And then, of course, the other testing they gave you. We had very good applicants back then in the 70s.
Yeah, one thing they're saying now, it's of people that could join the military age people, they're saying 80% of them are already disqualified because they're either not physically fit or mentally fit or emotionally fit in today's society. Like people who are of age already are disqualified because they would need some type of waiver to get in, where I'm assuming back then, 50 years ago, that probably wasn't the case. I'm assuming, obesity and all that wasn't as prevalent as it is today. Did you work out back then in your early 20s, or just the normal working as a plumber, or you didn't eat as much so people weren't as big? Or I'm curious what your fitness was like back then.
Fitness was good, just a normal routine. Of course, when you're 20, 21 years old, you're a lot better shape than the years take away from you. But actively lifting weights, things like that, no. I didn't. I like, the normal sports kept you in shape, playing basketball and so forth, softball, whatever. It kept you in good shape. Then, of course, you went through the police academy, and
Yeah, what was that like? Let's talk about some. I'm assuming you got approved or you got accepted. Of the 35, was it most of you, or is it just a percentage of you?
no, I don't remember seeing any of them
Really?
after I got on. But the city of Miami had their own academy class, and then, of course, you went in book learning. It was very important, studying criminal law and rules and regulations, procedures. You would have some running, some push-ups, and that. They weren't real strict on that at the time. We took judo. We had to take judo, and that was twice a week.
So self-defense.
And along with judo, you were taught Japanese arresting techniques, certain ways to restrain people, and that the Japanese, I guess, they have a very good system that they use. And so we learned that. We had that a couple of days a week. And then, of course, the classroom.
How long was that course?
15 weeks
Okay.
at that time.
And at that point, you were accepted, but people could still wash out in those 15 weeks?
Oh, absolutely, and several did.
What would they usually wash out for?
Well, some of them, the testing was just too tough for them. They couldn't pass the testing. Other ones, you went through a pretty thorough background, but one or two, you slipped through the cracks sometimes, and all of a sudden something came up, and it was, they call out your name and bring your books with you, and you knew they were gone. But I think 90% probably made it through with me.
Because they wanted you to succeed.
Oh, yeah. Well, they chose you.
Yeah.
And they say we don't make mistakes.
Yeah.
Because we picked you. So.
Yeah. So you make it to the academy. What was that initial, once you passed? Did you have like a sense of accomplishment? You did something, or what was that initial, like, I made it?
Well, as you're going through the academy, you have riding assignments, and they'll take a week where you ride on the streets with a regular officer and then listen to him, learn from him, go to different scenarios. That happened twice during your academy days. Once you get through, now you're on probation. So, excuse me, you're being watched. And then they had the field officer training program where your first month you ride with an officer, you're evaluated. The second month you ride with a different officer, you're evaluated. The third month, a different officer again, and you're evaluated. And what you're doing during these periods of training is you're learning how policemen don't always do the same thing the same way. And you listen, you see how things are done, you interact, and then you say, this is how I like to handle it. I like the way he handled that. So that's how I'm gonna treat myself, to do things that way. And then the fourth time you go back to the initial officer you started with, and he'll ask you, how'd your other assignments gone? Is there anything that you particularly liked, that you particularly didn't like? And you go over that with him. And then you start your career based on pretty much what you learned from these senior officers. The next 2 months, You were on your own, but under the guidance of a supervisor. He would watch you. You didn't ride with him, but he would go to your calls, see how you handled your calls, and everything. Total thing in over 25 years is a learning experience. I mean,
Right.
you're learning all the
Hopefully you
time.
never stop learning. Yeah.
No, you don't. You don't stop learning. I mean, once you thought you've seen everything, you haven't seen everything.
Yeah.
And there's a continual training as you go through your career. You have to put in so many hours a year to maintain your standards. And of course, through the academy, you not only your book learning, your self-defense, your your shooting qualifications. You learn how to shoot. They put you in different scenarios, shoot, don't shoot scenarios, to see how you'll react to different situations.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's okay to make a mistake, but then you go over the mistake, don't make that mistake again.
Mm-hmm.
And they had what we called Survival City, where the whole area was set up like a city. They had bars, they had houses, they had different things like that. And then here comes a guy out the door, is it a shoot, don't shoot, turns around, might have a cigarette lighter in his hand, and that's what you saw in his hand. Should you have pulled the trigger? Probably not. But yeah, and it's funny with the news media and judges, and sometimes they would criticize what you did, and they would say, okay, we want to send you through Survival City shoot and don't shoot courses and see how you react. Most of them didn't do very well.
Right.
They either got killed or were shooting the wrong people. And they say, okay, we see you got a split second to make this decision, and we see how tough it is. And he says, do you ever shoot to wound? I said, oh, okay. Have this target go by, and I'll try to shoot it in a leg or in an arm. It doesn't work. We're taught to shoot center mass right here. If you're going to pull your gun and you're going to shoot, you shoot to center mass. That's the biggest part. Those bullets don't have eyes. You try to hit a skinny leg like that, it's going to ricochet, and who knows where it's going to go.
Yeah.
It could go through somebody's window, somebody walking down the street. Hopefully your field of vision is clear where there's nobody there, but it can't happen.
Yeah, that's where you have the theory versus reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's not just a police thing, but in almost any field, you'll have these people in academia or people that, why don't we do it this way? It sounds great in theory. And it's like, okay, go do that in the real world, right? Like with soldiers, you'll have people in the Pentagon make this decision about whatever. And then in the real world situation, it's like, this makes zero sense because we're in the field. So I'm sure you experienced that with the local politicians. Why do you do it this way?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, well, because in the real world, this is what happens.
Yeah, until you've walked in my shoes,
Right.
don't criticize me.
Correct. And I think that's something today in society, we're so quick to put off someone else's choices or actions, and we don't take a second to pause and be like, okay, what do you think their experience was like? And we'll talk a little bit more, maybe a little later, about just the feelings we have towards cops today. But back to the beginning of your career. So it sounds like you got really good training, right? You met with multiple people, a lot of on-the-job training. And then it sounds like you personally just had to hire, whether it's emotional IQ or just higher IQ, to be able to intake information and process it. What were some of those first few calls like when I don't know if you remember, was there any of those calls where you're like, oh, this is what it's really like?
Well,
not about just shaking hands.
Yeah, you've got different areas.
Yeah.
Of course, you've got your upscale areas. You've got your very dangerous. I rode in very high crime areas. It was called, in Miami, Liberty City and Overtown, two very high crime areas. And going to each domestic calls were the worst, because you never knew what was going to happen, or if they were going to turn on you, or what was going to happen. So you learn basically to separate people, try to get the story, and you find out both sides sound good, even though they're opposite.
Right.
So don't take it as
and this was before body cams and all that other stuff, audio recording devices.
Yeah, way before that.
So you got to take pretty good notes, probably, or remember what they're saying.
You do. First of all, you got to get everybody settled down, find out what the problem is. Uh, Sometimes and you had more leeway back then. Now, when you have domestic violence issues, you're required to arrest somebody.
Hmm.
Yeah, somebody's got to go to jail if there was an injury. Back then, you could talk to people. Okay, what do you want to do? You know, do you think we can settle this tonight? Do you have a place somewhere else you can stay and cool down? And you were able to do that back then. Now it's nope, somebody's got to go to jail. Domestic violence has really taken a turn. And it's too bad. You really break up, I think you break up families that way because, number one, after everybody cools down, you know, he goes to jail or she goes to jail and the other person, they're not going to come to court and prosecute. They really aren't. It just doesn't happen.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, the first few calls, I came from a small town in Pennsylvania, of course, not a lot of crime, but armed robberies, burglaries, high-speed chases, and that all came within the first month.
So would you be considered like a beat cop, or you had a certain area that you would go out to?
Radio patrol, called patrol officers. Where I worked, it was two to a car. You pretty much have the same area, so because you become familiar with that area, familiar with the people, familiar with the businesses and what goes on.
So would they encourage you to like build rapport and relationships with the local people in that area?
Oh yeah, that's where your best information comes from, the people in the area. If you want to solve crimes, know what's going on, you got to rely on the public to have some trust in you that you're going to do the right thing with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the most important thing. I don't want to say informants, although you do have confidential informants, but just having a good rapport with people, and they say, hey, you know, that cop's a good cop, we can trust him, and they'll talk to you.
Do you think cops still do that today?
Well, I hope so. I'm not sure.
Because it's like when I see cops, when they're out in public eating or something, I try to go have a conversation with them just to be friendly, and so my kids also see that, so they can see like, hey, they're not your enemy. They're like, unless they're pulling you over, you're trying to get you a ticket for speeding. That's the only thing I don't like of.
Mm-hmm.
But just build relationships. I don't know if, just as my limited experience with them, I try to go out of my way to be friendly with them, but I don't necessarily see them doing that. I don't know. But sounds like back then you were trying to be friendly with the public.
Yeah.
Because you wanted them to
trust you,
like you, appreciate what you did.
Yeah, I think there's a bigger push on community relations nowadays. I mean, you're trying to, but you know, being a cop and you get around, you don't go to calls because, you know, you're going to have tea with somebody. It's usually, you know, an incident's going on. It may be very violent. It may be that, you know, just something like their house was broken into last night and then the guy's gone handling the call. But how you handle the call, and I've always taught the kids I trained, look, you have a bank robbery? Yeah, that's bad. This kid has his bicycle stolen. That's just as traumatic to him as it is a bank robbery. And how you, especially the younger community, and how you treat them and how you interact with them, that's how they're going to grow up seeing you. And that was my big push is, hey, that's just as important to him as this armed robbery over here or this murder over here. And that's the way I always tried to train the
So,
officers.
if you're a new cop, are they actually trying to solve the crimes, or is that like a detective? Like, all I really know from police work is what you see in the movies and TV shows. And there's a lot of different TV shows. I'm just, as we're talking, I'm thinking about Blue Bloods. Mm-hmm. Do you watch TV shows like that anymore? Or are you like, no, I have no interest because it's not real?
Not so much. No,
Yeah.
not really. What you do, especially, I like patrol. I worked midnight shift for almost 10 years. I just love what I was doing. In the city of Miami, you work 4 10-hour shifts and you have 3 days off. And you don't rotate shifts. We found out that was hard on people. You go from midnights, then all of a sudden to a day shift, and in the afternoon, then back to midnights. And it was really traumatic on your body. And you, a lot of the guys wanted to go to college. They had off-duty jobs. And if you wanted to go to college, you could go ahead and set up your courses because you knew what your hours were going to be and your days off were going to be. And the same thing with their off-duty jobs. They could set that up. So it was a lot nicer for us. Yeah, community relations, very important. I I think they try to stress that, but you look at a city like Seattle, they're 400 cops short. I mean, and they're not going to have a whole lot of time to spend with you to talk. I mean, they're going from call to call. And that's what I liked about patrol. You get in there, you get a call, you go handle your call. If there was some evidence and you could follow up at that time, you would do that. Otherwise, you write the report that goes to an investigator. But you would keep in your mind what's going on in your area and keep an eye open for it, especially with narcotics, things like that. You try to find out what was going down and where it was happening and keep a better eye on it. The high level narcotics, of course, you turn over to the high level narcotics officers.
Mm-hmm.
But patrol, I enjoyed patrol. I was out there on midnights. I usually had a partner because, like I said, the area I worked, very high crime. And no politicians out there bothering you, nothing else.
So you worked that midnight shift for 10 years?
Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed it.
Because it sounds like you just had a healthy disposition towards people in general,
Mm-hmm.
Even though it could be a stressful environment.
Mm-hmm.
We do hear of cops who, because what I tell people, being a cop, you're dealing with people on their worst day on a regular basis,
Mm-hmm.
where the average citizen doesn't do that. Right.
Right.
And so you're dealing with negative stress, negative environment. How did you relieve that stress? Or do you think you as a person were just more resilient than most people? Because you're seeing all sorts of things. I'm sure people being aggressive and mean to you. How did you relieve that stress?
Well, I enjoyed my activities off duty. I had a lot of friends. We could interact, have a few beers together. Usually I worked at least one off-duty job on one of my days off. Most of the time, when I got off in the morning, I was in court. But
were you getting paid to be in court?
oh yeah.
Okay, so you got paid to go to court.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's talk about did you get married at sometime in your 20s?
29.
Okay, so you were a cop for a while,
Mhm.
7-8 years. And then, yeah, let's talk a little bit about the personal life. So how did that, being a police officer, how did you guys meet? Let's go into that story.
Well, we go down the line. I had, girlfriends up till I was 29, and they would usually work a day job. I'd have the midnight job. So about the time I woke up, they were coming home from work. So that worked out okay. And then, like I said, we had 3 days off.
Yeah.
So you had a lot of time to spend together in that and enjoy each other's company and travel and, go wherever you wanted to go. Of course, there was that understanding that this is my career and I'm going to keep on with it.
Mm-hmm. So how did you meet the girl that you eventually married?
We had known each other for a while, and we met in court one day.
In court?
Yeah, matter of fact. She was a police officer.
Oh, she was?
Yeah, straighten that out.
Okay.
Got to talking, decided to date, and from then on, then we wound up getting married. We understood each other's job, which is good. And what
would you recommend cops marry cops now, or would you say it's too much?
Some of them work out, some of them don't. I mean, you got usually, with policemen, you have aggressive personalities.
Would you put yourself in that category?
I try not to. I try to go 50-50. I think my fiance will tell you that I'm pretty much a 50-50 person.
Mm. So were you self-aware enough to know to tone down the aggressiveness? Because you're saying that stereotypical cop is aggressive, maybe alpha male.
Mm-hmm.
You had the ability to do that, or you just were aware enough to know, like, hey, I need to tone down my behavior, or I guess, what was your...
Yeah, I could. Some can't. When you become a cop, you become very skeptical of people because, especially when you're honest, they're going to lie to you.
Right.
And you just become untrusting of people. And like I say, the areas I work, very high crime. You might get jumped at any time. So I kept people an arm length and a half away from me when I talked to them,
Mm-hmm.
only because that's kind of like the training
Right.
coming in. And you become untrusting, a little jaded, I would say. Uh, and after a while, if you want your relationships to work, you've got to learn to tone that down. And there are people, here's the people I can trust. Here's the people I can go to. I can talk to if I've got a problem. Here's the people I can have fun with. I don't have to worry about them turning on me. Uh, Things like that. And you've got, if you can't do that, if you can't get out and laugh, you're going to have a very hard time with yourself.
So, were you aware of that at the time, or are you knowing that by looking back and you're like, oh, I was able to? Did they train you on that, or you were aware that, hey, there's an on and off switch, I needed to be able to turn that switch off?
Yeah, they would talk to you a little bit about that, but until you actually go through it, you can't feel it. I mean, you say, oh, okay, this is what, okay, I can turn that. I don't have any problem putting that behind me. It doesn't work like that.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to learn to do it yourself and deal with what you've seen during the night. And it's not easy sometimes, but if you really if you have a good relationship with a person, you'll learn to do that, because that person will comfort you and understand what you're doing, and then it works out well between the two of you.
So let's say I was interested in being a cop, and I listen to this and I hear you say that. I guess what tools or what would I need to do to help me transition from aggressive mode to non-aggressive mode? Did you see yourself going down a path where you're like, hey, if I continue down this path, or were you aware enough to know, I see a lot of other people going down that path, I don't want to go down that path?
Yeah, actually, with policemen, a lot of suicides and divorces,
Right.
and you see that. And how am I going to stay away from this situation? And you've got to look at yourself, inside yourself. We have psychiatrists on the department. If you really had a problem, and psychologists, you could go and talk to them. I don't feel that I ever had to. I thought I was able to keep everything under control. If I didn't like to take work home with me, but sometimes you needed to get that out of your system. And if you have a good partner, an understanding partner, they would listen, and and again, I hate to use the word comfort, but they would comfort you. And
Yeah. I mean, you were both in that line of work, so.
yeah, on that one. But I had girlfriends too that would be that way, and not as easy sometimes as you think. But yeah, going home, being able to talk out your problems if need be. Of course, having a police officer as a wife, got her problems too. So you're able to,
Yeah.
I did this, and then you're back, and I did.
Did you
that.
work for the same department?
No, two different. She was with the sheriff's department.
Oh, okay.
I was with the city.
Yeah, so I was thinking through this the other day, and I did a little research. The term cop, that's just a generic term for someone in law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have police officers that work for a city,
Mm-hmm.
and then the sheriff works for the county.
Mm-hmm.
But because, like, if you're a police officer, say for the city of Linwood, you don't have jurisdiction to do anything with someone that is in Bothell, or you kind of do, or you don't.
Well, it depends. They can write up an agreement. What we had was, a lot of times maybe a riot would occur outside of the city and the county, and they would call us in to help, which automatically deputized us to work that area, and that happened.
Okay, so a police officer from a different city can have some jurisdiction in another city, but for a short period of time if they're like, hey, asking for help.
Yeah, especially like during let me see, it was in '72 when they had the conventions on Miami Beach, and we were given authority to work on Miami Beach to help out, because there was, of course,
Was
demonstrations.
Miami like a big party beach scene back then, like it is now, or?
Mostly Miami Beach. That's separate from Miami.
Okay.
Of course, they would come over to Miami some, but mostly on the beach. And they were all in there. They had the beach right there, the bathing suits and the beer and everything.
Did you stay away from that? You didn't have to work that part?
Only if they called you over.
Okay. So what was your I do want to talk more about overcoming the stress a little later, but as far as your career path, um, you were a beat cop for a patrol cop for 10 years. Was there a progression of career in there, or you just enjoyed at some point, like, is there a corporate structure that you go up? Um,
Yes, there was. After that amount of time, and then you start looking towards retirement. You get 10 years in. When you're first on there, hey, you just enjoyed a job, and it was a lot of fun. It was enjoyable. It's what the guys wanted to do. After a while, you start looking, what am I going to do for my future? So I took promotional exams after that, even though I didn't care to be, and I became a sergeant, then a lieutenant, then a captain. All the promotional exams, civil service exams, because it was higher pay, of course, and then a higher retirement. So you have to look at those things too. Is what's my future going to look like?
so what makes you, so what's at the bottom? Is there sergeant?
The bottom is police officer,
Okay, police officer, and then
sergeant.
sergeant. So
This is on the city. The other departments have different ways to rank.
So what skill sets would you need to be a sergeant that you would say, or was it just time in the job?
For a sergeant, you're in a supervisory position. You've got to go on calls, problems that police officer can't handle. You've got to intercede and handle it for them. Of course, any problems that pop up in your what you call sector, you have to attend to that because they're expecting results. And
Did you ever want to become a detective? A detective?
I was. We didn't separate. I mean, you could be a sergeant and be a detective.
Oh,
Same
interesting.
thing. Yeah, with us, well, you want to get into that? I worked various areas throughout
let's
the
do that.
department. Well, we can go through you're talking about stress. 1980, we had 1980 riots in Liberty City. That was 1 week of rioting, looting, burning, hundreds of millions of dollars in damage, 18 people murdered.
Yeah, we're experiencing that more now today in America, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that was a week of, and we weren't ready for it. To tell you the truth, we were not ready for that kind of.
What were they writing about?
What happened was there was a man named Arthur McDuffie. He was running from the Metro-Dade Police, which is the sheriff's office. They ran him down, jumped on him. He wound up dying when they were arresting him.
Was this African American guy?
Yes. And it was, I don't think any black officers from the county were involved. I think it was white and Latin. So anyway, they actually charged a couple of the officers in his death. The community was pushing, hurry up, hurry up. Their lawyers were a lot better than the state prosecutors, and they got acquitted. After that, Miami burned.
Mm.
It was funny, right after the verdict came out, we weren't ready for it, to tell you the truth. Nobody was ready for that type of rioting. And I was sent over to the courthouse. They said, we have a report. This was right at the beginning of the shift, that there's a car on fire. They're looting the court. They're breaking into the courthouse. There's fires on the first floor. Go check it out. Okay, so I have my partner. We go over there, and sure enough, there are probably 400 or 500 people there. Cars on fire. They had already broken into the courthouse. They had chased the bailiffs and some of the guards up to the second floor. So I came back, made a report. We sent what we call a field force over. That's a unit of about 52, 55 people, and secured that.
Are they trying to use rubber bullets?
No. And then while that's going on, they were looting stores and things. So you had to send field forces over to take care of that. And that was just a mess for a while. And terrible. Like I said, 18 people murdered, hundreds of millions of dollars. You could come down the interstate and you just see black smoke covering the interstate from all the buildings on fire and so forth. And
So that was a stressful time for the police department, I'm assuming.
yeah, for that.
Did you lose some officers during that time? Like they just quit, or how did the department deal with that stress?
After that, yeah, several did quit. They weren't ready for that. Again, in 82, we had another, and I think 84, another riot after that. In between, we had what they called the Mariel boat lift, and that was in 81. And what happened was Fidel Castro got smart. He said, come on over. You can take your relatives and friends back to Florida with you. Bring your boats. So a lot of course, mostly Cubans, hundreds of boats went over to Mariel, part of Cuba, to pick up their relatives and their friends. What Castro did was he unloaded all his jails and mental institutions, and he says, you take who we give you. And they loaded up. They said, well, I'm just here for my relatives. You take who we give you. And then the gunboats are sitting out on the side saying, yeah, you take who we give you. And they brought on all these convicted felons and mental patients back to Miami. And for months and months, crime just went out of control. They had to bring down 100 state troopers just to handle the traffic and accidents so the police could take care of all the crime that was going on, the murders and
So how did they resolve that? Because it's interesting, those things that you're talking about that occurred, we're facing those same things today, right? So how did they resolve it, or did it not ever really get resolved?
they won.
How do you get tough on crime? You know, there's a lot of sayings that we're saying right now. Maybe, yeah, let's get into it. The whole concept of defund the police, right? And it's like, in theory world, I don't know why someone would think this, but in theory, if we defund the police, there's less crime. And it's like, what's going on right now?
Yeah, I think you can see in Seattle the crime rates really exploded.
Yes.
You see cars bashing into buildings and looting the buildings at 2 a.m. And violent juvenile offenders, they wanted to get rid of, from what I understand, the juvenile holding facilities and say, oh no, we don't want to have that. Well, these kids are armed, carjacking. I mean, it's terrible. And from what I see, Seattle can't get people to apply. They're offering lucrative salaries, moving expenses, can't get people to apply.
I mean, who would want to, it's already hard enough being a police officer. Why would you want to work for a department who you don't feel like you're backed by the city council or your fellow co-workers in the city?
Well, that's exactly what happened when they had that chop zone in downtown, and they let them take over 6 blocks of the city. And they went in and they took over a police station. They ran the police out of a police station there. And if I'm a normal citizen, I'm going to say, how are you going to protect me when you can't protect your own police station?
Right.
And you can't protect these areas? I mean, what do you do? And they're saying, it's not our fault. We're being held back. We're saying, they're calling it the summer of love. They won't let us go in and take these things back. And you can't work like that. You're not a police officer enforcing the law if you can't do that. And then they were talking, there was military equipment. They wanted to give them protective vests and some vehicles. And, oh, no, that'll upset people. Well, you know, I want the best protection I can if I'm going in.
Yeah, scary times today. So when you saw the influx of immigrants, I think what are they calling them now? There's a term for them. They're not legal. Newcomers, I think is the term.
Whatever.
So back in the 80s, when you saw that influx, how did that issue resolve itself?
Well, there was a lot of crime, so a lot of them went to prison. We tried to get the ones that the mental patients, a lot of them were political prisoners too. But these mental patients and criminals were hardcore. Of course, they went back to jail. Prisons got overloaded again. The people that needed mental help, we tried to get them mental help. You know, they're not violent, but they're not good either.
Right.
They're a danger to themselves and others. They really are.
I mean, you see in the news, I try not to read local news sometimes because it can get kind of depressing, right? Lady walking on the street gets stabbed. Lady walking on the street gets hit by a bat. It's just like, it's crazy. So basically, to be tough on crime, you are actually going out and trying to get the criminals.
Actually, yeah. Exactly. You do the best you can with the time. If you're in a patrol car, you're going from call to call to call. You don't have time to do a lot of investigation. If you've got a lot of facts right before you where, hey, I can solve this within an hour, you go ahead and solve it within an hour. But besides that, it's calls for service back up, and especially Miami. We were pretty good about. Now sometimes that call on afternoon shift was always busy. They would work 3 to 1 o'clock in the morning, and the nice thing about working a 410 from 9 to 1 o'clock in the morning, you had double the manpower, and that's when most of your calls were going out. And if you had to set up, say you had a robbery and you had a perimeter set up, and you're taking up 6, 8 cars, well, calls aren't being handled because these cars are on a perimeter. I'd come on duty at 9 o'clock and they'd say, handle this call and check these 3 on the way, things like that.
Yeah. And that's back then, where even now it's more people and less humans to actually do the work.
Yeah, well, when you're 400 short, I mean, that's a lot of people that can't handle calls. I mean,
Right.
just calls for service are going to back
There
up.
was a moment, this city council, I don't even know if she's still a council member, but she was one of the proponents of defunding the police in Seattle. And then she called 911 because someone was throwing feces in her yard. And the police responded, sorry, we don't have the manpower to investigate that.
Mm-hmm.
And she filed a complaint. It's like, because you literally paid, you wanted them to not have as many officers, but when you want help, you're mad that they're not able to provide it to you. So you can't have it both ways, So did the crime go back down eventually in Florida?
It did eventually. Things thin out.
How long did that period take?
Oh, probably a good year and a half. You know, it was funny. You'd work. Actually, when I came on, there wasn't many Spanish-speaking officers on the department. They couldn't pass the test, civil service test, height, weight requirements, and stuff, because most of them were very short.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I had Spanish in high school, and then some in college when I started attending college after I went through a police academy. So I was able to take some reports and then turn it over to a Spanish-speaking detective, which were very limited. They got there in 1980 and 81 when the Mariel boat lift came over, and we had more Spanish-speaking officers then. So I'd be riding with one, and would stop one of these guys on the street, and he'd be talking in Spanish, and I said, what did he say? He says, I can't understand him. He's talking prison language and stuff. He said, I can't even understand what he's saying, which was ironic.
In the movies and TV shows, when they're solving crime as a detective, it always makes it seem like it happens in a day or two. But in reality, how long does it take generally to...
I don't know, it depends on your physical evidence and that.
Yeah.
They
like
have,
CSI, it's like, here it is. 5 hours later, it's resolved. You're like, I don't know if it really works that way.
No, it was funny. Like I had one call. It was at a motel. Some people from out of state were there. They got a knock on the door. Guy dressed in a nice coat and tie, black guy with a briefcase. And he said, look, there's crime in the area. We'd just like to get your opinion on what's going on. Can I have a few minutes of your time? I said, oh, sure. Come on in. Well, he came in. He opened up his briefcase, pulled out a gun, robbed him, tied him up. Okay, so when they called us, we get up to the scene and got the information, what they look like, this and that. I said, anything else? I said, oh, yeah, there's the briefcase.
He left.
He left. Inside the briefcase was his wallet. On the briefcase was 2 great thumbprints. So in about 15 minutes, went down knocking on the door. Hey, you forget something, man? So there's an armed robbery solved just like that. So
Yeah.
those kind of things were.
When I was in the military, there was a private who needed a new jacket. So he went down to the PX and he took his jacket off and put the new one on and then left. And when they went to go figure out who did it, he left his wallet in his old one. And so they're like, oh, I wonder who stole the jacket. So some of these criminals aren't that intelligent.
No, they're not. That's why prisons are overcrowded. They're not too bright.
So, yeah, what are some other interesting incidents that you saw?
Oh, my goodness. Several, I'll tell you one incident. I was, again, being a street cop, And you have what you call field cards. Something goes on, and you go out, take the guy's name, address. He was there.
Let me pause you for a second.
Mhm.
You know how there's police scanners that people listen to?
Mhm.
Why would the police want the public to listen on their conversations?
I don't know. I wouldn't.
Or can they? Or is there a private channel that public can't listen to?
Mhm. I don't know. I certainly wouldn't. But
Because when you guys had your police, when you guys communicated, it's through the radio, right?
Mhm.
Can the public listen to that?
They have scanners that can pick up on that. One reason you may want to have that is if they hear a crime going down and they're around, then they can keep their eye open for,
Yeah.
here's a description of the suspect, and if they see the suspect, they maybe give us a call and say, yeah.
But I always thought it was interesting. It's like, it's like in the military, we're not having it so other people can listen to our conversation. But in the police world, it's like, oh yeah, anyone can just tune in to hear what they're saying. But I'm assuming you would have had a private channel that you could communicate on?
Yeah, we have tactical channels, which are encrypted.
Yeah. So then the average person can't listen
No.
on those. All right. So continue your story.
On one, and he's running down the street and he's throwing bottles at another guy and that. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. So I go over and stop him. I said, hey, man, what are you doing? This guy, we got into a fight and he made me mad. So, yeah, he said, I said, okay. So I took his name down and I said, who's the guy? The other guy. And he gives me his name. Okay, so I write that down. Well, later on, maybe 2 hours later, have a call about a shooting. So I said, I'll go by the call, see what's going on. Well, here's the guy that was throwing the bottles. He's dead on the floor. Now I've got a field car with him and this other guy having an altercation, and I've got the other guy's name. So give that to detectives, save them a lot of work. Had another good one. A call went out right at the beginning of the shift. It was a shooting. Girl got shot in the middle of 17th Avenue. A prostitute. The only information they had was a green car, elderly black man in his 50s, and he possibly shot through his window and killed this girl. Okay, so that's not a whole lot to go on. So later on that night, it's about 5 o'clock in the morning, and coming just kind of like my last circuit around, and I'm looking over to the gas station. Here's a guy vacuuming out his car. Green car. I said, wait a minute. Look at him. He's probably in his 50s. I said, why would he be vacuuming out his car at 5 in the morning? So I go on over. I pull up beside. There's glass on his floor. He's vacuuming up the floor. I get out of the car, shine my light in. There's a pistol underneath the seat. He was the guy that shot the girl early.
So that was just pure luck, I guess?
Yeah, just good patrol work. I mean, you cover your area.
Yeah.
Look around.
I mean, it's so different now with cameras everywhere and the ability to track phones. You didn't even have a lot of that stuff back then.
No, they didn't.
With the technology capabilities we have today versus back when you actually had to be a good detective. Now it's all data, right? Don't they have cars now, a police officer, where they have a camera that's scanning license plates all the time?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that was the thing back then.
No, not at all. No.
So
we just started having what they call the MDTs, mobile digital terminals, in the car where you could just type in a tag and it'll let you know who it belongs to and that. And once they instituted those, probably in '77, we picked up a lot of stolen cars. You sit at the red light, just type in a few tag numbers and bang, come up.
Yeah, there's memes today. It's funny when, especially for the people who get pulled over for driving or speeding or whatever, the guy's saying you're distracted on your little cell phone. And then you go look at the cop and he's got a computer and he's got all this other stuff. And you're like, you're saying I'm distracted? You got like a control center in your police car. Was there any, when you were a sergeant / detective, were there any cases that were satisfying to solve, or the one that got away and you're like, man, I wish I would have been able to solve that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, quite a few. As a sergeant, I worked patrol, worked communications, information management. These are different aspects of the department that are more inside jobs. I enjoyed being a patrol sergeant. Like I say, you go by the calls that your policemen are handling, make sure they're doing what they should be doing or what you think they should be doing, or if they develop any problems, then you help them solve that problem. Mostly as a lieutenant, took the promotional exam. Then I was in charge of school resource, street gangs, juvenile missing persons, and that was good work. I could interact a lot in solving a lot of the gang.
Are you still in uniform?
Uh,
You wore street clothes.
Back and forth, some street clothes stuff, depending on what we were doing, what kind of
Is it the
operations we were
stereotypical when you're in street clothes? Like they always like wearing like a trench coat or
running. Yeah. Sometimes. It all depends on the situation, what kind of operation you're running.
yeah. So later on, the last 10 years of your career, what was that like?
Well, even back before that, I was on the SWAT team.
Oh, you did do SWAT.
Yeah, I was a
How long
SWAT.
were you in SWAT?
Up till I became a sergeant, I was a SWAT officer 2.5 years probably.
So what's SWAT like? How is that different than just normal?
You're going into with SWAT officers, you have more intense training, especially with rifles.
Is it difficult to become a SWAT officer?
Yeah, you've got to really be physically fit because you're expected to be able to do anything. You would rooftop rappel out of a helicopter. To go down the side of buildings, you tie yourself off, swing around maybe to a window where a suspect is holding.
So is that like a job that most officers wanted?
I don't think most officers wanted. I don't think they could handle the training
Yeah.
because we had high-powered rifles. You take a shot and you say, "I'm going to go ahead and take this shot." You better not miss because
Yeah.
usually they have a hostage in front of them. You better be.
So you
able
went to
hit what
some
you're
type of
shooting at.
sniper-like school?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that was my job. I was what we call a rifleman. We don't use sniper. We use rifleman.
that's military. It's too aggressive.
Yeah,
So how was that experience?
that was good. I enjoyed the training. The two people that ran the SWAT operations and the training were very good. They were both ex-military. So you got part military, part police in there.
So like in a movie, you'd be that guy that's set up so you have a shot on whatever the building or wherever the target is.
Yeah, you set yourself up where there's a rooftop window, wherever it was. You had the one guy, which would be me, sighting in on the scope, and the other guy working the radio, so you didn't have to take your eye, because it would be awful hard where you've got your rifle sighted in, and then you have to take your thing off and talk on a radio, so you always had a secondary guy repeating or relaying what needed to be said.
Yeah. There's questions I want to ask. I probably won't, but I'm assuming you're in some interesting situations as a SWAT officer.
Yeah, when they had to do raids, especially narcotics, where you felt that there was probably firearms going to be involved, you had SWAT go ahead, secure the premises, and then you'd have the
Yeah, SWAT is normally they have more gear on them, probably more protective gear.
yeah.
They're usually covered their faces too, right?
We didn't cover our faces. We
Okay.
just had baseball caps and protective vests,
Yeah.
of course, and then we had the better equipment, the rifles.
Yeah.
We'd go in, we'd make sure everything was secured, people were down, handcuffed, and then the unit who needed our assistance would come in, do their search.
Would SWAT get called out regularly?
The way we worked it, you see TV, and they're huddled together here, and that's not really the way it works. What we had was when a SWAT operation was necessary, one guy would go in, pick up the van and the equipment, and would report to a certain place, and they would all dress out there. Now, SWAT officers, we kept our special equipment, gas masks, uniforms, jumpsuits, things like that in our patrol cars. We took it with us. And then any other special equipment, they bring out the van and meet us at the location.
So what made you get into that, and then what made you realize to get out? What phased you in and phased you out?
Well, what phased me in is some of the guys wanted me to join up. I was a pretty good cop. And they...
You were a good cop, but that was the feedback you're getting from your peers.
a little bit of both. I knew my abilities, and then everybody would want me. Here's the guy I want watching my back. So, and especially with SWAT, you want somebody watching your back. When I got out is when I got promoted as a sergeant, and then I went out of SWAT because they had other SWAT sergeants.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't need me there.
Was that sad when you left? Because I see it like in the military, you have special units, right? Special forces, Navy SEALs, all that stuff. So SWAT is almost like special because they get more training, better training, better equipment. So some guys like to stay in that. I'm assuming some of you guys stay in there for a long time. You didn't mind phasing out of that though?
No, well, I didn't have much choice. So, like I said, when I became sergeant and I was out, you miss the camaraderie, you miss the training and everything, but you got to move on with your career. You can't really be a SWAT officer all your life.
Yeah. So what makes someone, so when I was talking to my, when I did a podcast with a guy who works as a paramedic / firefighter for the city of Everett. And I asked him like, what makes someone a good firefighter or paramedic? So the question I pose for you is, what if someone's interested in it or someone thinks that, hey, I want to be a cop, what's characteristics or skills or what should that person know or be aware of? What do you think makes someone a good cop versus not so good cop?
Okay. What makes a good cop?
Yeah.
Guy with common sense, person with common sense, I should say, because we've got some pretty good female officers as well as male officers. Common sense.
So what is common sense? Help me define that. How do you objectively, or is it subjective?
It's just common sense says, here's one. I'll give you an example I had, and they use this a lot in their training. I'm patrolling Liberty City. Here comes a guy. It's July in Miami.
It's pretty hot. 92
degrees out. Humidity is 100%. Here comes a guy. He's walking down the street. He's got a long trench coat on. And I'm sitting in a patrol car. I've got the air conditioner going and I'm sweating. And I'm saying, something's going on with this guy. He's walking down there and he's too cool. So I pull the car over and I stop him. He's got his hands in his pocket in the trench coat, this long trench coat. I said, let me see your hands. And he takes his hands out and a sawed-off shotgun drops down out of his trench coat. But the thing is, common sense says, are you going to be wearing something that heavy when it's 90-some degrees out?
Yeah, and what's unfortunate today is now they're saying if you have common sense, you are targeting or you're generalizing or they use that as a negative aspect to it, right? And it's like, no, like we as humans, as I'm training my kids, there's so many potential threats out there. You want to be able to quickly assess things, which means you're going to generalize stuff. Sometimes maybe not they're the best, but they're there to keep you safe, right? And so like my youngest son, at this point he has an unhealthy fear of dogs, but that's because dogs have chased him and he has been nibbled by a dog. So whenever he sees a dog, he's now, sure, there could be friendly ones out there, but now he's just going to have but that's there to keep him safe. And so now when we have common sense, people are like, oh no, you're just being racist or you're being a bigot or you're being whatever. It's like, no, I'm just based off of my personal experience. If I come across a situation, I'm trying to quickly assess it. And so I feel like common sense is something that we're now telling people don't have, because you got every situation's unique, everything's nuanced. It's like, sure, but I still need to be able to quickly assess things, and a lot of times it's subconscious how we assess them.
And if you take time to explain that to people, when you stop them, okay, here's why I stopped you, here's what I saw, and you're apologetic, they're okay with you most of the time. You know, okay, I understand.
Yeah.
Something like that. Here's another situation, and it was, a young officer got killed. He was chasing a couple of suspects in a stolen car. They jumped out of the stolen car, ran around a couple of corners. He ran around the corners chasing them. And when he came around one corner, the guy was standing there with a gun like that and shot him. Now, common sense says you just don't go around barreling around a corner. You stop, you look, and then you go ahead and proceed.
Yeah.
But that got him killed, and it was a.
So the movie's got that part right. Stop at a corner. Because in the movies, you normally stop, peek, and then you run.
But it's the same thing. If you're going to knock on a door, you stay to the side where you've got more wood there that if somebody shoots, it's going to probably not penetrate the wood and hit you. So you knock on a door like this. Don't stand in front of the door.
Yeah.
That's common sense. Says you don't do that.
All right. So common sense. What other characteristics to be a good cop?
Not taking things personal. Don't take it personal. It'll eat you up. And then you start making mistakes when you take things personal. You listen to what's going on. Remember your training. Remember what the laws are, what the procedures are, and go by that. Inside you might want to do something different. Don't do it, because that'll get you in trouble. Be careful what you say, because your mouth can get you in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Don't threaten people. Just do it.
So let's talk about towards the end of your career, because how long were you a police officer for?
25 years.
25 years. And did you deliberately do the 25 towards the end because you knew you were going to get that pension right away, or what made you get out?
It was just things were starting to change in law enforcement. And I hate to say it, but affirmative action really hurt. I'm all for equal opportunity, equal pay, equal job, equal everything. But they were starting to, at the city, if you may be a police officer and you know somebody that just got elected to the city commission, and he says, I want him to be a major now. So all of a sudden he jumps up 5 ranks and he's commanding people and he has no command experience whatsoever. And those were driving you crazy because towards the end I was a captain. And what you could
Is that pretty high up?
Yeah, that's the last civil service position in Miami.
Oh, okay. So you're overseeing more than just, are you overseeing that precinct or more than the
Yeah, depending on what, I did several jobs as a captain. When I worked high level narcotics, bombs, things like that, it was called special investigations. We worked with all the federal agencies, interacted with them. So I had to be vetted real close. And once they vetted me, I was okay with the FBI, DEA, Secret Service. We did dignitary protection, all the high level stuff. And we had all the best equipment to do that high level. We bring in tons of cocaine. Where they talk about kilos, we're bringing in shiploads of tons of cocaine. And as a captain, I was in charge of that unit. And in that unit, you had the best of the best.
Did you ever have to deal with crooked cops?
Yeah.
And that's probably tough because it's hard to not to take that
Really
personal.
tough because you get labeled by the community once they find out. There's a book called Pirates in Blue.
Mm-hmm.
And what it was in the 80s, and these were mostly Latin officers, they were ripping off boatloads of cocaine. What they were doing was they were finding out from informants when these cocaine shipments were coming in, and they'd board the boat, make all the people jump off, and unload the cocaine in their patrol cars and take off with it. Well, what happened was, finally how they got caught was they had one shipment and they made these 7 guys jump into water. Well, 3 of them couldn't swim and they drowned. And their bodies wound up floating offshore. And then once they started investigating, homicide was investigating, they started putting 2 to 2 together and they found out these guys were ripping off cocaine shipments.
Yeah, because if you're a criminal and someone takes advantage of you, you're not going to go to the police. Although you're seeing that now, criminals calling the police because they didn't go quite the way they wanted to. And you're like, well, you were committing the crime in the first place. So how does the department try to protect itself against internal conflict like that when police officers, how do they police themselves?
Well, we try. We have internal affairs, of course. And then the state attorney's office, this was in Miami, state attorney.
But even prevention, how do you prevent someone? Because the money allure is pretty high, right? And that's how they make so many movies about this, so many. And I'm curious, is it as big as a issue as these movies make it out to be, or do you think is it more common than rare, or is it more rare than common?
It depends. We work with the feds. You get to better cases. We've gone into places and in the bedroom, there's millions of dollars laying on the bed. And who's this money belong to? I don't know who it belongs to, because they don't want to get hit with IRS. So we take all the money in, and the feds were pretty good about it. They would let us have most of the money because they said we really don't need it. We're okay.
We don't need it.
Yeah.
So you guys, are you then able to use that money if you guys take
Yeah.
money in? So then that becomes a property of the department.
It becomes property of the department, and what you can use it for. So much has to go into the community for community programs and such. I think 20% of what we confiscate, and the other 80 has to go into equipment and things that aren't normally used by a police department. They can't buy, your normal pistols with it, uniforms with it, things like that, cars with it. But other things, special
So
investigations.
it's like you're like getting bonuses for some of these cases. So that's a good incentive, is go solve some of these crimes with money involved. Because you guys actually get to use the money.
Yeah, for the good.
Yeah. I'm okay with that. Cocaine, I'm assuming you're destroying.
Yeah.
But money, you're actually, so if you seize an asset, you're then able to use it. Could you use a car? Like undercover car?
Yes.
Nice. Yeah, I'm okay with that. If you see someone's...
See, in Florida, it's funny with narcotics. If you're caught with narcotics in your car, we can confiscate your car. If you have a marijuana roach in your ashtray, we could take your car. And a lot of times what we would do is we'd take the car and would offer, you can buy it back at 50% of its value. We get to keep, you've got to pay us 50% of the value of the car, and you can have your car.
So let me ask you this, because I have my own personal feelings on it. But so during COVID, when people were driving less, officers were giving out less tickets for driving infractions. So that was a loss of revenue to the city. And so you knew that and then you know how they have the red light cameras now that are automatically giving tickets? Is that really making things safer, or is that just to the average citizen? I want the average citizen to view cops as a good thing, but I think most people just have, when they think of cops, they're just trying to get money off of you, right? Whether it's through the red light camera, or they didn't get their quota, so towards the end of the month, they got to pull over more people. I think that's kind of the stigma that the average person gets now on cops, and what we need to highlight is the cops that are actually. Well, I jokingly say, go solve some real crime, right? Someone that's actually taking advantage of someone or something. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the cameras are nice. They alert you. They make you aware that now that you can see them, the high level cameras.
Yeah.
It makes people more aware that, I need to stop. I better put on my brakes and not try to take this red light.
Do you think they did it for the revenue, or because they actually?
I think a little bit of both.
Yeah.
It serves.
Was there such a thing as like, you guys need to pull over more people because we need to generate more revenue?
No, we didn't have quotas or anything. Now, you worked motor units and accident investigations. You were expected to write violations, and we had.
Did you ever work that yourself?
No, not motors or AIU, but we have what they would call selective enforcement zones, and where we were having a lot of accidents or maybe pedestrians getting hit, then they would set up on that because people were getting hurt. And school zones, people go blasting through there 40 mile an hour, say, whoa, wait a minute, it's 15 mile an hour.
Yeah.
And
so you never worked that area?
No, not that type.
Was that deliberate choice? You made that decision to not work that?
Yeah, I didn't care for motors. I didn't care for accident investigation. I liked what I was doing.
Do you think most cops feel that way, or some of them enjoy the power of pulling someone over and giving them a ticket?
Oh yeah, some of them are badge heavy, and but you got to understand, a lot of the citizens, that's going to be their contact with the police department. You got to leave a good impression, and I didn't write many tickets. I might pull you over because I said something's going on there, so I'd check you out and say, look, here's why I pulled you over. Just be careful. If your record was clean or you didn't have any warrants or anything, yeah, most of the time I'm going to cut you a break unless it was really something terrible. I mean, you were really speeding or tail.
Yeah, I don't get pulled over that often.
Good.
But there was one where I was like, just lock me up already. So it was midnight in Seattle. I think it was my buddy's bachelor party. I don't drink, so I wasn't drunk. And it was like, I don't know, almost midnight. And for whatever reason, I was just trying to get home. And I went in the HOV lane by myself. This is in Seattle. And I was probably going mid 70s, right? When you should only be going 60. I don't know why I was driving. And maybe it was raining. I don't know. And sure enough, I see the cop pulls up behind me and I'm like, there's no way I'm getting out of this. Like, I've clearly multiple violations. Like, just lock me up already. And he comes over and it's like, have you been drinking tonight? And I was like, nope. And just lets me go. And I'm just like, I guess he was just looking for drunk people. And I wasn't drunk, or maybe it was the end of the shift. So he's like, I don't have time for this guy. But yeah, but there was a few tickets that I got, and it's like, oh, you just go to a lawyer and it's off. So then that's when you get a little jaded, because you're like, if you have some means, you can just go pay someone to get. So it's like, I was going to lose the $150 either way, whatever it was. So I might as well go get a lawyer who just gets it expunged. So that's where I think sometimes, because that's our general experience with cops, we don't have I wish we as a society had a better disposition towards police officers. But that's, if we highlighted like, hey, we went and solved these crimes. This is the stuff that's happening that we're trying to help. Then I think people would have a better disposition versus like, dude, I got pulled over one time where I was like, I don't like driving behind semi trucks because you can get rocks or whatever, right? And so, and I knew there was an HOV lane coming up, so he's going 60, so I went around him just so I could get around him, and maybe I hit 73, and then I got pulled over, and I was like, there's like, because if you follow someone long enough, someone's going to be breaking the law at some point, right? It's inevitable. So that's where I think people get jaded with that kind of stuff, because it's just like, dude, if you follow someone for at least 10 minutes, there's probably some violation that occurred. So that's why people get jaded, because it's like, dude, go fight some real crime. Like the stuff that you're doing, like I can get behind that, because it's like, yes, you're actually trying to solve real issues. But I also get it. We don't want to encourage people to drive however aggressive they want, because there is accidents. I mean, accidents happen all the time on the highway. So I see it from that point, but it's also like, are you just trying to make money? Is that what we're doing here? Or are you trying to keep the roads safe? But I think we need to see more positive interaction with police officers where we are trying to solve crime. It's not just about giving tickets out. So you got towards the end of your career, you hit year 25. Was that a bittersweet moment for you, or what? Why did you decide to quit at that time?
Oh, I was ready to go. Like I said, police work was changing. We weren't out there aggressively going after criminals anymore. It was more like they were looking for social workers or something. It just seemed to be the way. And the city, they gave an incentive for retirement. They thought, oh, we get rid of these higher paid officers, we can hire more young ones. Well, they found out with the young ones, they were getting more lawsuits and stuff, and it was costing them really a bundle to have it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, things were changing. It wasn't the same. And a lot of guys in the military now, especially my son and my grandson, my son just retired from the Air Force, and my grandson's just getting out after 6 years. I said,
out of the military?
Yeah.
What did your son do?
He was security forces. My grandson.
What branch is that?
He was a sergeant, tech sergeant.
This is the military?
Yeah, he's Air Force.
Oh, Air Force.
Yeah.
So that was like that's their version of MP?
Yeah, kind of. He took care of, like, he was in Afghanistan at Bagram Air Force Base, and they had to take care of all the situations there, although he wouldn't tell me about it. He got deployed a couple of times.
Yeah. So he did 20 years?
Yeah. And well, he got a disability too. He got hurt in Afghanistan, so he got a disability on top of that. But he said this is enough. He said it's not the same as when I went in. Things were changing. Their philosophies. We're not soldiers anymore. I'm not sure what we are anymore.
Yeah, I'm conflicted on that as well. I'm prior military, and it's like maybe 10, 15 years ago, I would tell someone, yeah, if you want to become a man, go join the military because they will help you do that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like in today's world, I don't know if I would give that advice anymore.
Yeah, it's like you got to be pretty politically correct now.
Yeah.
Military. My grandson was the same way. He's what they call a fusion analyst, and that has to do with high tech, satellite security, all these top security things. And he says, "I'm ready to get out." He says things have really changed since I came in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's conflicting because we need a military and we want strong men to be in the military, but I don't know if we are attracting those type of men anymore.
I don't know either.
I was at the Flying Squirrel, it's where you can go jumping, and there's this little scrawny little kid there. And I asked him what he wanted to do, and he's like, "Oh, I want to join the military." Normally you'd be like, "Oh, cool." And then I was like, "Well, do you exercise? Do you work out?" No. I'm like, "Why do you think you'd be good at this? Like, you don't even have an inkling for exercising." And for him, he was like, "Oh, it should be fun." I was like, oh, we're definitely not attracting the brightest or the fittest right now. If this little scrawny kid thought the military would be a good route for him. So I don't know. I'm conflicted about that. And I can see why someone is conflicted to be a police officer, because in theory, you're there to serve and protect.
Mm-hmm.
And are we actually allowing police officers to do that right now?
Well, I'll give you, and I'm talking about Seattle because I've been out here enough now. In Miami, I know we wouldn't take any guff in Miami. If you're blocking the road, you're getting off of there.
Yeah. DeSantis definitely has been tough on crime.
But two situations that happened in Seattle, and one was where they were down in was it Capitol Hill, I believe it was, and they're spinning the cars all around.
Oh, yeah.
Burning rubber, and the police came and they just backed off. They didn't stop them. And you say, what do you do? Who owns the streets here?
Yeah.
Do the police own the streets? I mean, not own, but
Yeah. Control.
And it's that. How do you account for things like that? I mean, really. And then other ones. I remember one guy. The policeman was taking a report on a burglary, and the victim says, "Hey, there goes the car." He says, "Okay." He said, "Aren't you going to go after him?" He says, "We're not allowed to pursue him because it's a property crime." And it's embarrassing.
It is.
And like I said, even when you got your own precinct taken over, they ran you out of your precinct. I mean, how do you?
Yeah, it's tough. So let's talk about life outside, because now, how old are you at this point?
73.
No, when you got out.
Oh, when I got out, I was 46.
46. And by then you were still married.
I was.
And you had a couple kids.
Uh-huh. Son and daughter.
Son and daughter. And did you get a job after that?
No.
That's what intrigued me initially about your story, was you retired at 46, and you then what? You dedicated your time towards being a family man?
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about that.
Okay. 46, I got out. I mean, I had the best job in the police department. I was a captain in charge of special investigations. You can't get a better job than that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had unlimited overtime at captain's pay. I'm interacting with all the federal agencies. I had the best of the best working underneath me. So they made life easy, because they would come to you and say, "Hey, here's our problem, and here's how I think we ought to solve it."
Mm-hmm.
So that just made life so easy for you.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd had enough, and that was it, enough to get out. And then my father died when he was 66. And he'd worked up till like he was 64. And he was a good man, provided for the family, home, food, everything we needed, but never spent much time with me. And I don't fault him for that. But I said, I don't want to do that with my kids. I want to be there. And I coached baseball. I traveled with them, took them places. My daughter competed in, she was a black belt. She competed in karate tournaments all around, and I traveled with her. In soccer, she was on a soccer travel team.
What inspired her to join karate?
When she was young, I looked around at things and the usual stuff, dance and things. It just wasn't her. She was rough and tough. And I said, let's try karate. And then she went into that and she was very good at it. Yeah.
Because I mean, I have a daughter, and before I had a daughter, I joked, I was like, oh, I'm going to get my daughter into self-defense so at least she can protect herself, because I think life can be more vicious towards women, right? Like, I'm not as concerned about someone, if I stay away from crime, right? I'm not as concerned about someone coming after me, right? I mean, you hear, when I worked at Verizon, people would come in and be like, oh, I was just at Costco and someone beat me over the head and stole my purse, or not victimless crime, but like petty crime. I'm not so worried about someone doing that to me, right? Watch something happen tomorrow, and I'm like, man, I got beat up. But as a girl, that's a real concern,
Sure.
right?
Certainly is.
And then there's because you're a girl, guys want to take advantage of you. And so, I am interested in maybe having my daughter take some kind of self-defense. I'm sure that probably made your daughter feel a little bit more confident, and
Oh, she could handle herself. There's no question.
yeah, I don't want to mess with her.
No, you didn't.
So that's really cool that you saw what happened to your father, and you didn't pass judgment on it,
No, not at
but
all.
you're like, I want a different life for myself, and that's a life where I spend time focusing on my family. Because how old were your kids at that time?
Let me see. My daughter,
You don't have to give exact age, but were they like,
I'm thinking she was 16,
okay, so they were teenage years.
and my son was 4 years younger, so he was 12, 13, right in there.
So you're able to focus just full time being a dad. Did your wife work, or you're just living off your pension?
She worked. She worked different jobs. She was like I said, a deputy sheriff.
Oh yeah. She was also an officer.
Yeah, but then she retired when she had maybe 12 years on or something. No, yeah. And then she went into another line of work.
What? So you lived in Miami. What moved you out here to Seattle? Or when you were raising your kids, was that still in Miami?
No, that was actually it was in right outside of Fort Lauderdale in a small town called Davie. I didn't. Miami was getting taken over.
Yeah.
And very crowded. Davie, where I live, was a very nice area. It was actually a horse area, and a very nice town to grow up in. And so they grew up there pretty much, and then it was starting to get crowded. That's Broward County. That's the next county up. That's where Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood, and it was getting overtaken by people. The population was booming. So I wanted to get back to more of a small town. So I had friends that lived in Franklin, North Carolina. It's in the western part of the state. Small town. County is about 35,000. And got up there and really liked it. And met a lot of people up there. So I lived there for about 20 years. And enjoyed it. I became one of the Masons.
It's a Mason.
Yeah, it's an organization like Kiwanis, Masons, like that. And we do a lot of charity work. And then a friend of mine died. It was a Mason, a very, very nice guy. We got along real well. And I always helped him and his wife out, plumbing, electric, whatever they needed. And well, when he passed away, I went over there to find out, hey, what can we help out with you? Funeral arrangements. Do you need anything at all? And Karen was over there. That was her uncle. And so, and I had, well, anyway, she came over, and we got to talking. And my wife and I hadn't been getting along very well.
How long were you married for?
For 40 years.
You're married for 40. You don't have to get into this that much if you don't want to. I am curious. I'm married. Lots of people in America are married. Divorce happens a lot. A lot. Would you say your initial marriage was there always an underlying issue there? Or over the years, was there something that changed or occurred that then forced that?
Yeah, the first 20 were pretty good. I mean, we traveled and we both had careers, and it worked out okay. Had kids. But then it seemed like the last 20 is just a separation, a separation, a separation. Conversation wasn't there. Communication wasn't there. I could go into the nastier details.
Yeah, we don't get the nasty ones, but I'm just curious. So you guys grew apart, because usually when someone's been married that long, usually like, oh, we've been married this long, just might as well stay together. But that's interesting that you stick together for those 20 years after because now your kids are gone. Did either one of you work?
No. Well, she did a little bit. Let me say that.
Yeah.
And but then my daughter got pregnant, and I wound up raising our grandson for 16 years.
Okay, so that kept you pretty busy.
Yeah. And
Did she live with you?
Pardon me?
Did she live with you? Or did the kid live with you?
He lived with us, and she worked in Atlanta, and we were up in North Carolina. So she had a place in Atlanta, and then on her days off, she would come up. And
so you were his primary caretaker?
Yeah. With school and sports and all over again.
So you got to be almost like a father again?
Pretty much, yeah.
And
father was not around.
Yeah, so you enjoyed that experience doing that again?
Yeah.
Because you had two of your own kids?
Mm-hmm.
And then you got the
grandson.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the marriage ended, it sounded like. Was that a tough decision when you guys ended that marriage? Or was it more just like it had been degrading for so long that it was just like, let's just.
Yeah, it was. And
it was a
like
relief.
I say, there were circumstances before which I said, I'm not going to go through this again. It was not nice.
Yeah.
So.
Because people change, right? And it's like you changed, she changed, and that happens in life, right? That's common. It's just more of can you learn to appreciate how that person has changed, and maybe you grow so far apart that it's like this isn't working anymore.
Yeah, well, and it came out. She didn't want to go anywhere, didn't want to do anything. I had a lot of friends. They say, hey, come on over, bring. No, you go ahead, that type of thing, and then. A few nasty comments here and there. And what I said was I could tolerate it because I had a lot of stuff I did with the Masons. I had a lot of friends and stuff, but it wasn't comfortable. It wasn't fun.
Yeah.
And then when Karen came along, she was a breath of fresh air. We got to talk, and I said, I only got so many years left.
Yeah.
I was 69 at the time. I said, I don't have that many years left. I'm not going to sit here not do anything with it.
Yeah.
And that's what
you guys went your separate ways.
And then but Karen was from Seattle. She had come from Seattle the whole way to North Carolina to help out her aunt and uncle. And I said, geez, that's great. A person will do that. As a matter of fact, she did it twice to come all that way to assist. That's the kind of person I want to be around.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool that you're able to find that. Because I think most people would have given up, like, I won't be able to find someone at this point in my life. But you found someone.
Things were meant to be, I guess.
And you didn't have to go on some dating app or whatever. You just, in the living of life, you found her. So that's what brought you out here, was her. And so a couple of last questions I have for you. Later in your career as a police officer, what were some things that you picked up that you wish you would have known earlier in your career? Like, oh, that would have been helpful to know if I just would have understood that idea or concept. So think about that. And then advice that you can give to me now that you are, almost 40 years older than me. What's things that I can start implementing in my life, even at 35, that I can... things that you've learned, I want to basically steal from your experience and act upon that, so I don't have to wake up when I'm 60 or 70 and be like, man, why didn't I do that, right? Because that's part of the reason why I do this podcast. Selfishly, it's I want to hear a lot of other people's perspectives on life. That's why I want to meet with this 90-year-old, because I was like, dude, but the perspective of you on life is way different than when I talk to a 30-year-old or a 60-year-old. So yeah, those two questions is one specific to being a cop, and then one just older in life for someone you can give me advice.
Well, I made a lot of money as a police officer, honest money. Let's clarify that.
Yeah, well, we know where all that drug money went.
To towards retirement. That's one thing my dad had taught me, and he says, get a job with a pension. I mean, he gave me a lot of good information. He was a very bright man,
Yeah.
very bright. And so he gave me all this, even though he couldn't spend a lot of time with me because he liked to work, he gave me a lot of good information to think about. And I worked a lot of off-duty jobs, worked a lot of overtime when I was a
What were those off-duty jobs that you did?
Oh, everybody in Miami wanted cops. If all the banks, all the grocery stores,
Yeah.
you know, because robberies were terrible there. Football games, baseball games. When I
So
worked,
you're working as a security officer, essentially.
yeah, basically. But when I was working as a captain, high-level narcotics, we did a lot of narcotic investigations and raids. It would cost a lot of overtime. Now, as a captain in Miami, I'm civil service, so I can get time and a half for overtime. And I was on a lot of raids and stuff and investigations where it took a lot of overtime, and I was making a lot of money there doing that. But like I say, after a while, it just wasn't fun anymore.
Yeah.
I just lost my interest in it. But anyway, and a lot of the guys, when you work for Miami, you work for a big department. You've worked various departments within the department. So a lot of the state agencies and other agencies, they'll take you right in because you've got a lot of experience. And a lot of guys took a second job like that. I want to spend time with my kids. I want to be able to take them places. I don't want to have to say, well, I got to work, so I can't take you. You know, that's what I wanted to do. As far as other things, trying to get away, and I know Karen will tell you this, that I didn't get close to people because I still had that cop mentality where keep an arm and a half length away and be skeptical of people because people lie to you. And it took a while to get that out of your system that, you know, the rapport you develop with your friends and that, you learn to trust them, and you've got to have that trust. Otherwise, you're just going to be jaded all the time. And
Did you ever go down that path where you became jaded?
oh, yeah.
Were you that guy? Because it's when I was in the sauna the other day, and I was talking to a guy. I didn't even know I just like to have random conversations. It's funny because it almost became a podcast. But I asked the guy, "How was your workout?" He's like, "Oh, it wasn't good." I was like, "Well, why?" And he's like, "Oh, went drinking last night." And this is like on a Tuesday night or something. And so then we started getting into it, and he was like, "Oh yeah, retired cop, and now I work private security or whatever, but I just drink all the time,
Ooh,
like every day,
ooh.
hungover in the morning." And he's in his 50s, 60s. And so I asked him, I was like, at this point in your life, if you could go back, would you? Because I asked him, how did you get into alcohol in the first place? And he's aware enough to know that it's a coping mechanism, but it's not a healthy one.
Mm-mm.
And it was just like this mini therapy session because he's like, if I could, I would not incorporate alcohol in my life. But I think that is a mode that a lot of people use. Would you see that? Did you use that as a mode of coping?
No.
Or do you see that a lot with your peers? Or do you think that's what saved you because you didn't go down that alcohol route that a lot of people do?
Yeah, well, I see people getting themselves into alcohol and drugs, and I said, I don't want to be like that. I mean, what's the fun? You get drunk, you don't remember what you did, and you wake up with a headache. I mean, how's that fun?
Yeah.
That's just another problem to cope with.
Right.
Drugs, never had any interest in drugs at all. I don't even like taking prescription drugs unless I have to. But mine was, you know, I saw my kids. I said, this is enjoyable, spending time with them, coaching, traveling with them on their various activities.
Did you ever go to therapy?
Therapy? No. Well, I shouldn't say that. Twice on my first marriage, we went through counseling.
Was that earlier in the marriage or towards the end?
That was more maybe after 7, 8 years one time, and then after maybe another few years again.
The reason why I ask is there's a lot of talk now about therapy and counseling, and so I'm listening to 2 books right now. One is literally called Trauma by Paul Conti, and he's worked with celebrities, but he also just generally trying to help people through therapy. And then the other one is called The Over-Coddling of Americans. And both very good books, because it's like sometimes people can resolve their own issues, right? Especially if you can give someone just basic tools. And you seem to have that intuition already to be self-aware enough to be honest with yourself, and what you seem to do, which therapy is giving an opportunity to someone to be honest. But if you can do it with yourself, you don't necessarily need a therapist. And you seem to have, whether it's intuitively or whatever it may be, had that ability to look at information and then assess for yourself. Oh, if I work a lot and save a lot now, I won't have to do that later, because you were able to take advice from someone. That's why I asked if you ever went through that. But how did you get away from that guy that was going down that path of jadedness? Or is it just more of you having a self-realization, hey, I'm going down this path?
Well, I have a lot of self-confidence, and I've had to deal with a lot of extreme situations, and I dealt with them. So that really helped build my own confidence, especially on the police department. You go through some situations and, with the split-second decisions, and I could do that. So I had a lot of confidence in myself. But I watch these other guys, and they're out there, and they wind up drinking and doing this, and some of them doing drugs. And
So alcohol was never a vice for you?
oh, no. As a matter of fact, it cost a lot of divorces. And I'm saying, well, geez, yeah.
So you were able to see other people going through stuff, and that's how you learn, through other people's experiences. So you didn't have to go do it.
I said, I don't want to be like that. You come back and the problems are still there. Next time, no matter how you drink, your problem didn't go away.
Right.
Just created another one. So I'm smart enough to know that I don't want to do that. But I was young enough to know, hey, right now I have an opportunity to make a lot of money, which I did, and saved and invested in that. So when I retire, I don't have to get another job unless I want to. Now, other people, I guess you want to say they just didn't quite figure it right with inflation and everything. And all of a sudden, holy cow, they can't make ends meet. Well, I wanted to make sure that happened. I'm not a financial whiz by any stretch, but I know I have enough to live on. I looked at that, and that's another reason why I kept taking promotional exams, because I knew my pension would be a lot higher. But my joy in life was spending time with my kids, and that's what I really enjoyed. And then my grandson came along, and that was even more. That was kind of a pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
But then as we went through, and he left and went into the service, and things. I had good friends in that, and I enjoyed what I was doing. But the camaraderie wasn't there. The ability to travel with your partner and have fun and laugh, that wasn't there anymore. And I said, I don't want to do that. I only got so many years left. I'm getting up in age. I'm in pretty good health. But that's not what I wanted to do. And then it just so happened, I wasn't looking for anybody, but then so happened my partner over there came along, and and she filled in all the gaps I needed. Let's put it that way. Filled in the gaps.
Nice. So when did you start getting serious about fitness? Was it your SWAT days, or?
Oh yeah, back probably my early 30s. What's funny with cops is they'll go out there, they don't work out or anything. The first knockdown, drag out fight they get into, they're in the gym the next day.
Did you actually have actual fights with people?
Oh,
like
yeah,
they do in the
quite a few.
movies?
Yeah,
Really?
a rough area.
So you were physically having to get in fights with people?
Oh yeah, quite a bit.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So did you want to take martial arts then, or or is it just kind of like a bar fight, or were you actually controlled fighting?
Yeah, knockdown, drag out, grab whatever you can. Yeah, because they talk about, don't use chokeholds. Bull. Let me tell you, when you're in a fight and this guy's grabbing for your gun, you're going to try anything you can to restrain him. And if it's a chokehold, I'm sorry. That's the way it goes. If I can pick up a rock and hit him over the head, well, that's what I'm going to do.
Right. That's again where you have academia. Well, try to do it in such a way that doesn't hurt his feelings. You're like, that guy's attacking me, right? Like I tell my kids, if someone's attacking you, you kick him in where it hurts, right? In the movies, it's always like where their muscle is. And I was like, well, in real life, you're just going to kick them there. And then
That's right.
they
Really
can't work
works.
that out very hard, right? The fight's over.
But yeah, pretty much in my 30s, I had a friend of mine I was working with. He worked out a lot, so I got into it, and I got really big. I mean, I was I was a little bit taller, 6'1.5", 240, and I was just,
Pretty solid.
yeah, total.
How long were you able to keep that mass up for?
Up till probably my mid 50s, early 60s, and it's not so important anymore. Now it's more tone, keep your muscles in shape and so forth.
Yeah, because one thing I think about, because I plan on being into fitness till the day I die, is some people who get into fitness, there's such a thing as too much, right? And so I'm trying to find almost the minimum effective dose, because we like to overdo it. There's a majority of people that don't even exercise, so we need to get them exercising. But then there's like a smaller fraction of people that love exercising but do it too much, right? And so I'm trying to find that sweet point where it's like, all right, if I can avoid knee replacements, hip replacements, that kind of stuff, I'm all about that, because I don't want to be that guy. There's a guy at LA Fitness. He's in his early 80s, and he was a power lifter. And he tells me, like, don't do it, man. Like, everything hurts. All my joints hurt. And so I've never there was a short period of time where I lifted heavy. And then after that, I was like, it's not worth it. Like, sure, it's nice to be really strong, but it's like, there is a cost to that. So that's kind of what my personal journeys. Can I find a fitness regimen that isn't going to overdo it, so I don't have to get all these replacements? Because I used to run marathons in my 20s.
Oh, goodness.
I don't do that anymore, because you look at the data, you look at these guys that do marathons and ultra marathons, you usually think they're fit. They're fit, but what is their health, right? And a lot of them, I did a podcast with a guy who's 75, he did over 100 triathlons.
Oh, wow.
And he's like, yeah, those guys, they're not doing it anymore, right? I'm the only one, last man standing, because when you train to that level, when you're training 12 to almost 20 hours a week, there's a price to pay. It's usually injury or you just get burnt out when you're running that long. So I'm trying to find that sweet spot of, can I find a regimen that I can do until a certain age or until I die? And so I like talking a lot. I don't get fitness advice from 20-year-olds, right? Because like you said, as long as you're young and you can even have a lot of bad habits, you can still be relatively skinny. So I try to take fitness advice from people that are older, that have been doing it for 30, 40 years, because I want to implement that versus, because I want that longevity.
Well, mine was kind of twofold. Number one, I like the strength. But number two, you go up against somebody and you're pretty well.
Yeah.
They're going to back down. You save yourself a lot of fights that way.
Ronnie Coleman, they asked him, because he was a cop. They're like, did anyone ever get a fight with you? He was like, are you kidding me? Like, when I show up, fight's over. That would be funny to see someone try to like beat him up in his prime.
Yeah, that's where they square off. You said, really? All right.
Yeah. And so now that you are almost 74, right?
73, yeah.
73. Since this podcast is called The Game of Life, my question to you is, and you can answer however you want, whether it's a phrase, a sentence, a paragraph, but life is ...
Life is what you make it. Set your goals, make them obtainable goals. Don't say, I want to be president of the United States. Make yourself obtainable goals and reach those goals, and you get self-satisfaction out of that. Look at what age do I want to retire and what do I want to do? And then set your financial goals towards that age. Sometimes, it's a struggle, but it can be done if they're reasonable goals. Enjoy life, have fun, laugh. Find a good partner you can converse with that likes to do similar things with you. Don't overdo it, like you say, with working out and that. If you overdo it, you're just going to mess yourself up. Stay in good tone. That's what I try to do, stay in good tone. I'm not going to bench press 400 pounds anymore. But, if I can do 180, 200, good. That's all I need. I'm not looking to impress anybody, or I'm not looking to take anybody down.
Yeah.
But enjoy life. Find out what you like. Set your goals. Set your financial goals, and enjoy yourself.
Was there a point where physically was there a drastic point when you saw your physical prowess fall off, or was it more just gradual as you got older? Because at 35, I'm trying to think of like what's my fitness like now versus when I was in my 20s, and something I've lost even 10 years later is it's harder for me to get into that because I do running and cardio. It's harder for me to get to those last gears. I just don't have that edge that I did in my 20s. I'm curious what your fitness was like as you got older.
Well, once I got in my 40s, I was in still pretty good shape like that. But you got to realize, age is going to take things away from you. It's just a reality. So
what were some of those things that you noticed that it took away from you?
Strength was a little bit lessening. Endurance a little bit lessening. Not a whole lot, but a little bit. So, and you're going to gradually go downhill a little bit. Like I said, am I going to lift 400 pounds, bench 400 now? No.
So at your peak, you're benching 400?
Yeah, I could do 400. But yeah, I was big. I weighed 240 and I was big.
Yeah.
I look like an NFL linebacker.
Yeah. So you're eating a lot of protein back then? Did you understand that concept?
Yeah, pretty much. I like the whey protein, the little extra protein that you put in it. I wasn't a workout fanatic, but good enough to where it was nice because at the police department, we had a nice gym down there and you could go down and work out whenever you needed to. And being on the SWAT team, you had a certain amount of time each week that you were allowed to work out on duty. But then as I got up into my 50s, I say, well, why would I want to push up? I'm just going to rip my shoulder out. It's going to take 6 months to heal. It's not going to be 2 weeks anymore.
Yeah.
But just to keep yourself, your weight down and try to eating right, especially. And just realize that, age takes a toll. And that's just a fact of life. And just deal with it.
So for a younger man that's coming into adulthood, or let's say I recently graduated college, what's some like just good advice you could give that guy? It's not even about being a cop, just about being a man.
Well, being a man is realize nothing's going to be perfect. If you're looking for the perfect job, it's not there. If it's 90% perfect, you've done really well. You're always going to have idiots as bosses. No way around that. A lot of times you can find a good one and you enjoy that type of work like I did. We had them on the police department. You'd have supervisors and stuff that you didn't want to be around them. You'd try to stay away because they were idiots. But then you find other ones that really give you good advice and bring you along and so forth. Like I say, set goals for yourself when you're young. I know a lot of times you're just thinking about making money and, going out, have fun, enjoy, and that's fine. But realize there's going to become a time in your life where you're not going to be able to do all that. And you're going to have a nest egg set up. And how much do you think, what are you going to want to do when you finally do retire, if you do retire? What are you going to want to do? You're going to want to travel a lot? What do you want to do? And then you set up your retirement goals so you can do these things. As you're going through, don't hurry things, find a good partner. Sometimes it takes a while, sometimes somebody never does, but try to find somebody that you have in common. And like I say, I do like to use that term. Everybody has gaps in their life that need to be filled in. You find a good partner, those gaps get filled in and helps to make you a complete person and a whole person, and them too. And that's a great thing if you can find that.
Yeah, I really like that.
If you have children, make sure you spend time with your kids. That's very important. The influence you have on them and how they grow up and the way they act. That's extremely important. The interaction you have with them and what you teach them.
What would you say to young cops right now?
Oof. Let me tell you, I'd tell you find another career, really. Young cops, again, don't take things personal. Do the best job you can. Listen to other officers. See how they handle situations. Maybe you say, yeah, I like how he handled that. I think that's the way I'll start handling these things. Or you find other ones you say, oh man, that guy, he's got a problem. And you want to stay away from that type of thing. But always remember, especially with people, most interactions you're going to have with police officers is tickets, being
Yeah.
pulled over for traffic. So leave a good impression. Take time to explain to people why you're doing things in a kind and courteous manner. And a lot of times, and even when, like you say, oh, you're just picking on me because I'm this and I'm that. But if you take time to explain to them, they'll say, hey man, that cop, he's okay. Yeah, that saved me a lot of time from getting jumped by. You go into certain areas in Miami and these apartment buildings, and they're like a horseshoe.
Right.
And I've seen them happen. They go in there, some of these guys go in there badge heavy, and you're not going to win when you got 300 people throwing rocks and bottles, and all of a sudden they take these big dipsy dumpsters and block the way out. You can't get your car out. I mean, you're in the middle of a mess. But if you take time, and I had that happen one time. Let me just tell you this story. Went in there, pulled in behind him. He pulled into one of those apartment complexes like that. And all of a sudden, people are coming out to see what's going on. So I'm talking to him and I say, hey, here's why I pulled you over. I'm going to run a check on you. If everything's okay, we're square. I'm out of here. So, okay. So I run a check on him. He had felony warrants on him. So I went back and I said, look, man, you got felony warrants. I got to take you in. You know that. I said, but how about we do this real easy so nobody gets hurt, so I don't have to call 20 cars in here and we get into big conflict. Your friends are going to get hurt, your relatives, policemen are going to get hurt. How about just telling, hey, everybody, everything's okay, it's cool here. We just got to go down, get things straightened out. Okay, so don't go be doing nothing. And that's the way it worked out because I took time to explain and, hey, here's the situation. We don't want people getting hurt, so you got to go.
Yeah.
So, and once he said that, hey man, this guy's all right, everything's cool.
Yeah, that's the common sense part where it's like the letter of the law says you can be extremely aggressive if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But the spirit of the law is, can we do in such a manner where it doesn't need to escalate?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious, having now talked to you for almost however long it is, were you a guy that read a lot of books? Or my assumption is you were a guy, I don't know if you read a lot of books, but I think you were able to see life through your own experience, but also other people's experiences, and you're able to learn from that.
Mm-hmm. That's the best way.
Is that how you assess life?
Mm-hmm.
Because were you a book reader?
Not very much, no.
Yeah.
Only for promotional exams where you had to learn some things.
Because a lot of times people say read books, but for you didn't live in an isolated world, but you were out there in the world, constantly assessing information. Because I look at young people today and they're like, well, how do I get to the next level? How do I mature? Because that's the thing right now. You have the red pill, the blue pill. You have all these different communities, and it's like, if you think you have all the answers, you're going to be sorely disappointed in life, right? So an alternative to reading books is you have to be out there in life, living life, but also willing to take, whether it's conscious or not, but you're constantly taking life and assessing it, not even from your perspective, but from other people's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the route you took. Because, okay, you don't like reading books, not a problem. But are you out there engaging with life and people? Because so many people today, they're in their proverbial mom's basement, and it's like, A, you're not living life. B, you're online all the time. C, you're not having real interactions with people. All these list of things. So then it's like, well, at least read a book, because that will hopefully maybe give you some perspective on something. But for you didn't have to read the books because you were out there living life, but also seeing and having the awareness to see it from other people's perspective.
So you bring up a good point. Everybody's now, everything's texting and this and that.
Yeah.
There's no face-to-face communication, and that's the best communication is face-to-face talking. I mean, now it's everybody's on the phone or on the internet or something, Facebook, and that's no good. The socialization is going out the window. I mean, and even when I go to a restaurant, there's the family at the restaurant and the three kids are playing on their phone. You should be spending family time there and talking to each other. It's the social interaction is terrible nowadays, and we lose a lot there.
Yeah. There's simple things, but it's like, well, we've been doing that for however long we've been humans, right? Yes, we can be more connected with Facebook, but we're actually less connected to people, right? And so, like, I could have looked you up on Facebook, maybe I don't even have a profile, and learned a little bit about you, but by having this conversation, I would have a much healthier appreciation for you and the experiences that you've had versus just looking you up on Facebook.
Well, voice inflection, facial expressions, everything, you can't get that on Facebook.
Yeah. So this is just a random thought that came to my mind. As a cop, you had to probably constantly assess people.
Oh, yeah.
What is your initial assessment of me?
You're energetic. You like what you're doing. I see that. You like to work out, which is good. You're healthy. I think you're really trying to learn about life and teach other people about life, which is excellent to do. We've got to go through learning experiences, and we're not getting that. And we need people out there to help guide other people. There's no guidance out there anymore. It's just, like you say, everything's on the internet, and there's no guidance there. Not really. It's opinions and stuff. That's really good, but I think you're really interested in people. You're a people person, and we need more of that, people skills.
So you talked about guidance. How did you get guidance in your 30s and 40s? I get it in the police world, that part of your life, but once you got out of that world, you talked about guidance. Because you had so much, I guess, leadership experience in the police world, was it the masonry that helped, that gave you that community? Or because let's say there are men right now that want help, but they don't exactly know how or where to get that guidance.
Oh, actually, when I moved to North Carolina, now I'm dealing with a different, I hate to say class of people, but it was a different class of people. I'm interacting with more people that are blue collar workers and that type, and retirees, and in the Masons, we pretty much have one focus, and that's to help people. That's our primary goal.
So is it like a nonprofit? Because I've heard conspiracy theories about Masonry.
Yeah.
But is that different, or is that?
Yeah, that's that. Don't listen to that.
Yeah.
You've got to.
When you said Mason, I was like, oh, okay.
No, you got to be below. They're a very good organization. Most of ours is charity work.
Yeah.
And we don't brag about it. That's it. If you heard of the Shriners Children's Hospital and that, Masons. That's all Masons.
Okay.
And that's what we do, and we support those type of things and all throughout the state. But as I got there, I got into different people. I just one of the weddings just went to last week. He does construction work. A really nice guy. Him and his wife, and a lot of the people I met there, they're blue collar workers. They're plumbers, they're electricians. Some are retired police officers. And I learned a lot from them because they've got a different perspective on things too. Because I had come from the city and I moved into a smaller area again, and they're looking at things a different way politically and socially, and it was really nice. They don't put on airs. They are natural people, which was kind of nice because you get to some of these cities, you got to dress a certain way,
right?
You got to act a certain way.
There's a lot of public image you have to portray.
Yeah, they don't have that. It's, hey, dress how you want, drive what you want, you know. Talk what you want, just don't badmouth people.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask your help on something then. I think she's agreed to sit down with me, so that's great. But I'm having, I would say a hard time, but obviously I get a lot of no's when I ask people to sit down with me. Not everyone wants to be this open about their life, and I totally get that. But I would encourage our elders to to be more open and having conversation. So obviously I get a lot of yeses because I think this is my 23rd one. But if you have people in this area that you know that are willing to share their life, if you can connect them with me somehow, that'd be great. Because I want to continue to meet people like you that are willing to share their story about their perspective and their journey. So if you know other people similar to yourself, I'm all ears to have that conversation with them. But I know I need help from other people to do that. Is basically a referral. It's like, hey, this was great. I love doing it. It makes my job easier if you can help me find other people that are, because they're going to be more comfortable if you go up to them and say, hey, I just did this. It was great. Hopefully it was great, but there's a guy that would love to sit down with you versus if I go to that same guy, he's going to be a little bit more standoffish and it's going to be different. You know, this one guy, early 80s, I met him at the LA, and before I even told him about the podcast, I was just talking to him and he was telling me about how amazing his life was. He owned 30 cars, did all these jobs, been divorced 3 times, just going through his whole life. So I was like, perfect, you should be in my podcast. And then he's like, oh, but I don't know about that. I was like, you literally just told me how amazing your life was, and now you don't want to do it. So it was funny because he's like, oh, I was thinking about writing a book. I was like, you're going to write a book, but you won't like sit down and have a, conversation about it. So no judgment. It was just funny that he was, and I don't mind him bragging about how amazing his life was, but just be willing to share. Like, that's all I ask, because it's not for everyone, and I get that. But I would say, you know who Tony Robbins is? So he's like a life guru or whatever. And he talks about in life we go through different phases, right? 0 to 20, 20 to 40, whatever. So he's like, once you get past 60, that's the phase, that's definitely a phase in your life where you should be giving back, right? You don't have to, but it's like, what else are we on this planet to do if we're not interacting with other human beings? So yes, I understand in your 20s and 40s, you're really focused on your career, learning skills. You were able to start doing that in your 40s, which is awesome, right? You were able to start giving back well before 60. But he's like, and if you make it past 80, that's super bonus. Like, you should be like, at that point, like, if you did everything right, you should be continually giving back to the next. So that's just his philosophy with the different cycles that we go through. And so, yeah, I encourage, and I also understand that, like, most elders, they're not used to young people going up to them and talking to them. So they've become more jaded towards the younger generation. Like, when you were my age, were you able to have conversations with people older than you?
I was intimidated a little bit because I figure they had more of a wealth of knowledge than I was. And when I was brought up, I was kind of brought up different, and Karen will tell you that. My family, or I don't know, maybe it's just the area I was in, we didn't talk a lot. It was like, if you asked a question, you get a yes or no answer. If you didn't ask, you weren't told. That type of thing. And so it was a little harder for me to ask older people things. But
even once you got into your 30s and 40s, were you able to develop relationships with older gentlemen?
Yeah. I got just more used to talking to people of all ages, just being in the police work.
Because that's just, I don't think that happens as much today in society. Is we're not having, people only generally talk to people within their decade now. Where I was at a different Y. I go to a lot of different Ys, and the one in Bothell, I don't know if you've been to that one. There's a track above the basketball court. And so she was walking on it, and I was walking next to her, and we were having a good conversation. She's probably in her mid-60s. And she's like, I don't talk to people younger than 60. And I haven't done that in years. Or we need that. We need the older and younger generation to connect. Because when you're young, you have a lot of youth and vigor, not a lot of wisdom, right? And so we need...
Or not as much as you think you do.
Yeah, not a lot of wisdom at all. And so we need people with life experience, not to necessarily poo-poo them, but also be like, hey, great, but let's think a little bit long-term strategy on this, right? bad policies lead to bad things, right? You see that in the police department, you see that in the government. Initially, that policy sounds okay. Let's defund the police. Let's play that out. We have already experienced that in the 80s, right? And what happens with riots? What happens when you're soft on crime? What happens when you allow illegal immigrants? Like, that's not a new experiment. We're doing it all over today, right? So that's my ask is when I talk to older people, it's please be willing to try to connect with the younger people. Not everyone will, but I encourage you to do that. And I think you already do that. So I'm not telling you something new. And I think it's awesome that you are involved with your kids' life. It's awesome you're involved with your grandkids. And one thing you said was have goals. What is your goal for the future now?
Right now, just travel.
Yeah.
And we're able to do that. Travel and have fun. I mean, really, that's my goals. Like when I was in the Masons, just saying the Masons, I set myself to be the master of the lodge. That's the top dog in Masonry. You get through 7 chairs you go through. So I set myself a goal and I went through all the chairs and became the master of the lodge.
And you don't get paid for that? It's all nonprofit?
Yeah. No, there's no pay.
Is it like Boy Scouts? What is it? Did you see they just changed the name of Boy Scouts?
No, I didn't.
Were you ever in
Yeah.
Boy Scouts? Were you a Boy Scout?
Yeah, for a while. Yeah, not.
It's now Scouting America
Oh.
because they want to allow females into Boy Scouts.
Yeah, okay, I understood that part. Yeah.
They just changed it yesterday.
But we set goals like, and with Karen, we're going to go to Ireland and do this. So we set our goal to do this, or we're going to do a river cruise. So we set a goal.
So what do you think people your age, what do they get wrong about getting older? Do you think they don't have those goals anymore? So then they...
I think, well, some do, some don't. Some, I think, give up on life. They start aching and paining and I just can't do this anymore. And no, you can't say that to yourself. You got to push yourself sometimes, not overdo it, but, still stay within your limits, but you got to push yourself. Maybe you don't feel like getting up and working out one day. Okay, that's okay. But the next day you need to work out. And I don't think the older generation understands the younger generation because they're more into technical stuff. So they're saying, well, there's a separation there because all these kids want to do is be on their phone and do stuff on their phone, and there's no interpersonal skills. And I think that's a big blockade there.
Yeah.
Myself.
Yeah.
And like I say, I'll sit in the restaurant and because I went out with my parents and we sat there and we talked. I mean, we had dinner and we talked. Not anymore. The whole time. And I'm saying, my goodness, that's not a family outing. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
But it's rude.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Messiah, yeah, it's a pleasure
It's
meeting
a lot of fun. I'm sure I'll see you more at the Y.
you.